All right, a carbon credit. Does anybody here know what a carbon credit is? We got what, a couple people? A few people, good, all right. A carbon credit gives you the right to buy 1 ton of CO2. And you think, why would you want a ton of CO2? You're going to fill balloons with it? Now, the reason you have CO2 is to create a fair market exchange process by which companies and people can exchange carbon credits. Now, that probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So think of it more like this. Think of it like you're some sort of frat guy and you're in a frat house. And you notice that the women just aren't coming over to your frat house anymore. And then the conclusion is, after a big, long debate about the subject, is that everybody is burping too much. And so they decided to create a burp jar. Every time somebody burps, they've got to put $1 in the jar. And after a while, people realize that this is costing them a lot of money. And maybe they shouldn't, be eating so much pizza and buying cheap beans and craft dinner, but they should maybe buy more nutritious food. And they would burp less, and they would actually save money, even though the more nutritious food was more expensive. So this is kind of the same concept as carbon credits. If all the companies have to pay for the carbon that they produce, they will start thinking about more economical, or not economical, but more carbon neutral ways of producing the products and services and processes they want to produce. And those that get ahead can actually sell their carbon credits to other companies who are still behind, and that creates a market. It sort of incentivizes people to create better processes that pollute the planet less. This is a great idea in theory. So the Kyoto Accord was invented to make this work for the entire world, but it didn't really work. And you think about this as a really tough problem, because how do you divide up the amount of carbon that you're allowed to produce? Should we do it on a per capita basis? Each person gets so much carbon? Or do we do it on a land basis? Do we say, well, your country has this much land, so you're going to get this much as a percentage of the total carbon in the world? And then do you count the oceans or not? And do you count all your forests? Their forests may be like bringing carbon back out of the atmosphere, so maybe Canadians should be able to pollute freely because they got lots of forests. Like, why not? Or maybe you've got like a lot of cows in your country. Should you be paying for all those cows that are polluting and making carbon? Does that fit? Or what if you have a volcano? So all of a sudden you got a volcano, you got to sell your SUV because a volcano erupted on your island? That's just nuts, right? So these are the kinds of things that people go through when they try to figure out how to make this carbon trading system work. And unfortunately, it's an issue of great political significance, and everybody argues that their way is the right way, and nobody can decide on anything. And then they go, well, how serious is this problem really anyway? I mean, maybe the planet is really very resilient. And they go, oh, no, the ice caps will melt, and we'll all be underwater soon. And then somebody scratches their head and says, well, if the water is expanding because of the temperature, won't the land expand too? And if it doesn't expand, why don't you just heat it up with some more carbon-generated fuels, and the land will expand more than the water, and we'll be all fine. What's the problem anyway? We don't have to decide on anything. So that's kind of where it goes. So they say, well, how is this relevant to me? What do I care about? I could sit here and go, you know what, let the governments argue about it for a few years, maybe 20 years, 30 years, and eventually they'll figure something out. But that's probably not going to do the job. So today I want to talk to you a bit about carbon karma. And I'll tell you a personal story about this. So I thought it'd be rather hypocritical not to buy a carbon credit after I've used it to sort of promote my old space elevator idea. So I was booking a flight the other day, and this little thing popped up and said, would you like to buy carbon credits to offset your flight? $9. I was like, that's not so bad. I could afford to do that. So I went through the process of using my credit card to pay you these $9 to offset the carbon from my short flight. And that was great. I feel good. Spent $9 and I'm now on a carbon neutral flight. And then later that week, I'm on a date and I'm trying to look cool. So I pick up the bill, drop my credit card down on the table, and the waitress comes back and says, I'm sorry, your credit card was declined. I'm like, oh no. So I got to call the bank during my dates. I'm talking on the bank, and then, okay, finally I got somebody, and they give all this personal information about myself. And then finally, they're like, okay, it was some company in Africa said they charged your credit card for some carbon blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, that was the carbon credits I bought. They went to some company in Africa. That's really interesting. And I said, that was right. That was $9. That was a real transaction. You didn't need to cancel my credit card. So they say, okay, that's fine. My date was so impressed that I bought carbon credits. The whole incident was like, no problem. She explained it to the sushi guy. He was like, guess what he did? He couldn't pay his bill because he bought carbon credits. Wow, that was awesome. So that's what I mean. Carbon karma. You buy your carbon credits, it'll come back to you, even if the governments haven't figured out how to make it work yet. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.